Crimson Pill with host Antonin Feori. Today, Saturday, the 20th of August, 2011. That is not my opening music. I don't know what happened, but I guess variety is the spice of life, so we'll welcome that as a treat. Folks, we have quite an interesting show for you today. I appreciate the patience. Gotten a lot of emails and contact over the last couple of weeks when I've been away and doing a couple of rebroadcasts. Last weekend, I was engaged in the Iowa straw poll, and I have a bit of news or some findings to report to you from my experience at that event. But we also have information to cover today that goes along the line of some of our previous shows on the Crimson Pill, some of the work that we've been disclosing, the expositions that we've been making about NASA's disclosures, the way that it seems that NASA, probably and likely at the behest of the Department of Defense, has been making an extremely full-court press set of releases revamping, revitalizing the information that they had been misleading us about for the previous 60 years. And the full-court press continues. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, there have been a number of additional announcements that, once again, folks, if you go back 5, 10, 20 years, these were the things that the misinformation and disinformation campaigns were in a full-court press to actively stamp out the moment that these findings had any chance of coming to light for public knowledge, for public consumption. And now in the course of the last, now it's about 3 months' time, it seems that they've been in a mode of full reversal, and for some reason, and we'll certainly talk about what those reasons may be, they have been making a concerted effort to revamp and to change the story on each of these fronts, whether it's the potential of life outside of the Earth and the Earth's atmosphere, extraterrestrial life, in other words, as well as a number of other issues that we, once again, will talk about on the course of today's program. How about this headline? New report. Aliens will fix global warming or kill us. One or the other. And how about that range of possibilities? How about this headline? DNA scraps found in meteorites. And another headline. NASA reports first evidence of flowing water on Mars. Folks, once again, in the last 3 months, they have been concertedly and by programmed effort been reversing their positions on everything that they had been misleading us about, we being the public, we being the taxpayers, the ones that actually fund their toys, the ones that pay their salaries, that they had been actively misleading and disinforming us about for the last 50 to 60 years. In the last 3 months, on each and every one of these fronts, they are beginning to reveal the truth, and that can only mean one thing. And I'm going to beg from an interesting analogy here to compare it, but think about each of these quote-unquote leaders that find themselves caught red-handed in the acts of evil and or perversion that they engage in. Most recently, I think publicly, we have the example of Congressman Weiner from New York, who, when it was first brought to light by a whistleblower or by a researcher what he was up to, he responded with outrage. He responded with lies and cover-up, but in particular, what disgusted me is the outrage that he responded with. And he maintained that posture for about a week's time until finally the evidence had mounted to the point where he could no longer pull off the lies and hide under his rock. And then he turns to the tears gamut, and he begins to tell us all about how he needs help, and he goes off to seek treatment, and then he resigns after having said he should not need to. Folks, in the case of all of these institutions and all of these leaders, they only begin to tell the truth when they realize they can no longer hide from the light of day. And that is what our Department of Defense and that is what NASA has been up to in this last 3 months. Please join me on the other side of the commercial break. We'll continue our exposition. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen of the RBN listening audience, to the Crimson Pill. I am your host, Antonin Feori. And we are talking yet again and once again today about the numerous cover-ups and lies that our institutions, that we fund, that we pay the bills for, the cover-ups and lies that they have disinformed us with and distorted the truth about our understanding of our solar system, of our world, etc., and why it is that all of a sudden they seem to be coming clean with these elements of the truth. And as I pointed out before the break, that usually and typically can only mean one thing. And what that is that the light of day has begun to shine in such a way that they realize they can no longer maintain the lies. And so they begin at first to let the truth trickle out. They issue some trial balloons, just like each of these so-called leaders of world institutions, just like Clinton did back in the day with the Lewinsky scandal, just like Weiner has done here more recently, just earlier this year. It always works the same way, folks. First they lie, they put their foot down, they throw a tantrum, they try to undermine or demolish the credibility of those who are shining the light on them. And then finally, once they realize the tide of truth has shifted against them, then it's either the tears or it's the trickle of truth. And from our Department of Defense, which is to say NASA, because they're merely a subdivision of our Department of Defense, and the actual space agency of the United States of America, which is a Department of Defense program. It is a secret space agency, which in one of my earlier programs, we had gone through the Space Act of 1958 and delineated, specified precisely. It's right there in the Space Act of 1958, folks, where they say that there are the two space programs and that the Department of Defense program, the secret space program, is the one that gets its hands on all the goods. Everything that they have found of significance over the course of this last 50-plus years, because that particular agency was actually functioning from the early 50s on. So really it's 60 years. Everything of significance that they had learned was deemed national security instantly. And so everything that we, the public in the United States or people around the world, have been allowed to taste or to sample coming from NASA has been whitewashed. It's been only the stuff that's deemed safe to know, and or it's been the stuff which has been distorted and given to us only in the form of misinformation and disinformation. Now, before I continue with some of these topics, we have some interesting news, and to me it's very exciting news to present to you. A change in the RBN host lineup. The first is an addition to the RBN host lineup, and that is our good friend Lark from Texas, who so many of us have enjoyed listening to Lark and his thoughts and his commentary as he has called into any number of the programs from the different hosts and shows over the course of the last couple of years. And Lark has agreed to join the RBN lineup as a host himself, which I think is fantastic news. And point in fact, Lark is going to be taking over this time slot that the Crimson Pill has been in for the last roughly a month and a half, which is Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m. In fact, I'm expecting to have Lark joining this program here soon, just a bit later in today's show. We'll have a chance to visit a little bit about some of his perspective and where he intends to go with his program. We'll sort of save that thunder to allow Lark to introduce some of those ideas himself. And in that change and in that addition to the RBN lineup, the Crimson Pill and your humble host, we will be moving to Sunday evenings in the time slot that was formerly occupied by Wayne Madsen. I think that was the Wayne Madsen Report. And so we'll be Sunday evenings from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time. And I'm thankful for that additional section of an hour, because that will allow the freedom to do some more interesting things in terms of our guests and interview possibilities, as well as an opportunity to take more of your listener phone calls and engage in more of an ongoing discussion with so many of you whom I very much value, once again, your feedback and the constant stream of emails that I receive with information. Some of it is whistleblower information, and some of it is ideas for new topics and new issues or areas to discuss. So, folks, please understand, for me, the door is wide open, and my email box especially. Please keep those messages coming, because it helps give me a sense to how to refine my own research. Now, turning back, folks, to the things that we've discussed, these expositions, not just of NASA, and I really almost should stop using that acronym, that word NASA, because it's nothing more than a Department of Defense program. And in fact, almost everything that happens in NASA is nothing but a whitewash of what the real and true significant events and or programs and research that are being conducted by the DoD space program. Why is this significant? And how does it tie into the discussion I'm going to have with Lark here a bit later in the program? Well, there's a term that's called the Hegelian Dialectic. The Hegelian Dialectic. In case you're taking notes at home, that's spelled Hegelian, dialectic, which itself is spelled Dialectic. And I hope you'll do a Google search or whatever your preference is to do a little more research on the subject and the topic. It's a term that I first became aware of, distantly, back in my university days when I was forced to study some of the work of the philosopher, if you will, Hegel, the Frenchman. But more recently, it took on significance to me in a real-world way, probably about 8 years ago, when I first explored some of the work of writer, lecturer, and researcher David Icke. Now, for some people, there might have been just a yellow flag go up at the mere mention of the name David Icke. Some of you may know nothing about this guy, this researcher and author, and some of you that do, you instantly get connotations of the reptilians that come to mind. I want you to set that part aside. In all of the work that David Icke has done, yes, there is that component of reptilians and some stuff along that line. But folks, if you can set that to the side, and I'm not necessarily saying that you must or have to, but if you can, you would also find in his work a tremendous wealth of information very much along the lines of what so many of our hosts on RBN present to you, which is connecting the dots about the geopolitical machinations and following the money, following the work of the international banksters going back through the course of history in conjunction with these, whether you want to call them the elites or the New World Order, but it's that combination, following the trail of money and following the trail of atrocities that has been, well, frankly, folks, for the last couple of 100 years, has been moving the entire world toward a one-world system of governance, which is also to say a one-world system of financial empowerment for those at the top of the pyramid. And David Icke's work, folks, to be honest with you, is really what opened my eyes. And again, this is back in the time frame of 8 to 10 years ago, is what first presented to me that trail of connecting some of those dots. In particular, I think what was the biggest eye-opener for me was following the dollars going back through the Bush bloodline, and not just through King George II or King George I, but going back to George I's father, Prescott Bush, and his involvement in the funding of the Nazi regime in World War II, fostering the conflict to profit from it. And then you can follow the trail back earlier than that, and it opened a whole can of worms for me. But to come back to David Icke again, it's the first time that I was presented with a real-world meaning for this Hegelian dialectic, which is to say, in short terms, problem, reaction, solution. It involves using what's called inductive reasoning in order to move decisions or move actions that are taken toward a specified or defined outcome. In other words, it's rearranging the facts in order to fit what our objective is, or to fit what the plan is, and altering the facts to get there, as opposed to using the facts to observe them or look at them objectively to perhaps form the basis of what our outcome ought to be. Present you with a quick example of an Hegelian dialectical formula. And I know that these sound like $10 words, folks, but it's actually pretty simple when you get to it. Problem, reaction, solution. Think about September 11th. Think about, frankly, any false flag operation that we all know about that have been conducted through the course of history. The sinking of the Lusitania, the Tonkin Bay, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. All of these false flag operations, in essence, employ an Hegelian formula. For example, if my idea of freedom conflicts with B, your idea of freedom, well then C, neither of us can be free until everyone agrees to be a slave. Well, that doesn't make sense, does it? In fact, it sounds an awful lot like the type of quote-unquote logic that you came across if anybody read 1984 and the different interesting little twists, the political propaganda twists